Hello. Now we shall continue to analyze the goals of Ukraine global provocation. The sixth goal: to separate the European Union and Russia. As such union, first of all, means strengthening of cooperation and interaction between the continental Europe and Russia. And in the opinion of certain circles of the USA, it can cause the gradual expulsion from Europe. The USA is extremely worried with the signs of close relationships between Germany and Russia. Their joint weight can threat the global interests of the American elite. And mass meetings of solidarity with the anti-fascist struggle in the Ukraine happened recently in Berlin and other cities of Germany. They help to come soon the day of national liberation of that country from tens of thousands of American occupation troops, as we can read in some newspapers. What emphasizes thereupon a crisis manager from Latvia, Sergei Vasilyev. You can see this. The USA is a player, the aims of which are different from the aims of its NATO and other allies. Certain circles in the USA need neither united Ukraine nor the separated one. They need no Bandera, European Union, Russian Ukraine. They need no Ukraine at all. They only need the territory of the permanent conflict with crowds of refugees both in the West and the East, and guerrilla war under any flags to stop any transit, fueling Europe with power resources and Russia with European money and goods. Bandera pawns are a convenient disposable product in this game that allows the US Federal Reserve to solve the problem of attractiveness of the dollar through economic diversion against both commercial partners, the European Union and the Customs Union. And Ukraine is a suicide bomber to perform such diversion with already put on bomb of 15 nuclear power engineering units and wires of the gas transportation system. So it's the point of view of Sergei Vasilyev from Latvia. What's happening in the East is not a short-term action, said Vasily Krutov, the anti-terrorist Center's chief of the Ukraine on May the 3rd. This is essentially a war for a long period of time. Of course, it's not all that simple. For example, a number of American companies intend to conclude contracts for production of natural gas from shale formations in Ukraine. There are also other projects, implementation of which depends on political and social stability, collapse of corruption schemes in the territory of Ukraine. According to Transparency International, Ukraine took the 144th place out of 176 countries analyzed in perception of corruption in 2013. Seventhly, the seventh goal: to justify the beginning of intervention to the countries reaching power resources such as Venezuela and Iran. Political and ideological reasons for such intervention are evident. Having caused mass bloodshed and entering of Russian peacekeeping troops to the territory of Ukraine, Washington, D.C. will untie his hands for aggressive military action in Iran, Venezuela and other countries where there is the need to restore order. These are key countries in the global economic, power resources and regional and political aspects. A radical turn to the right in Venezuela will pose a direct blow to all governments of the Elbe countries, and even the more moderate center-left governments in Brazil, Argentina, Chile and putting order in Iran will have Washington to put the entire Middle East under control. This is cynical but logical. Hundreds of billions of dollars are at stake, and reactionary circles insist on such events. It is not accidentally that President of Bolivia, Evo Morales, accused the United States of looking for an excuse for military intervention in Venezuela with a plan to regain control of the oil wealth of the country. In the conditions where the USA find a compromise with Iran, there are too many difficultly forecast risks from military intervention to this country. There are even more grounds to believe that the pressure on Venezuela is intensified. In conditions of collapse of the USSR, subsequent NATO expansion to the east, and the anti-terrorist strategy of the USA when it occupied Iraq and Afghanistan, the US had little concern there about its deep represented with countries of the Latin America, which led to almost universal rising of the left-wing and center-left governments in them. Today, when the USA evidently loses its positions in Eurasia, in conditions of the possible new Cold War and active geopolitical rivalry, the attempt to regain political and economic control over the countries of the Latin America is quite justified. The Monroe Doctrine will become an important element of its foreign policy again. Eighthly, to get a substantial profit from controlling supplies of power resources in conditions of the new Cold War, or partially a hot war. Apparently, the Obama administration believes that with a decrease in demand for Russian gas, the influence of Moscow in the European region will be decreased. Though the USA doesn't export gas at all, its Department of Energy started issuing permits for export since 2015. Total American companies made 21 claims for construction of port facilities for exporting of the LNG, and only 6 of them were approved. Now the 7th also approved. All facilities except from those located in Louisiana are at the early stage of construction and will commence operation not earlier than in 2017. It is possible that supplies will start even later. Apart from the problems with arrangement of export, it is not quite clear about the profits for consumers regarding the use of the LNG. According to the Oxford Institute for Energy Studies, the difference in costs between the liquefied natural gas and the gas from the pipe is $3 to $4 for 1 million of British thermal units. So practically the cost of 1,000 cubic meters of gas is different, not in favor of the LNG, by more than $140. Having imposed sanctions onto Russia and having cut down supplies of gas from it, it is possible to make delivery of LNG to Europe and other countries profitable and to deprive Russia of its major income from export of gas at the same time. According to the website, the LNG Export USA 2014 Global Buyer Congress, the current and potential US LNG buyers include China, India, Chile, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, France, Spain, Germany, Austria, the Dominican Republic, Dominicana, Pakistan, and Nigeria. Of course, sudden cessation of supplies from Russia will result in large losses for the European Union, and it will do so only in extreme cases, but it can't quite decide in favor of diversification of its energy supplies and invest in the expensive American project named the Ukraine Provocation. With production booming, US oil and gas companies have put pressure on the administration to review long-standing policies that have limited energy exports for security reasons. The need for alternative gas supplies in Europe, made more palpable by the role of natural gas in the ongoing Ukrainian crisis, has heightened calls for opening up domestic gas markets to foreign buyers. It must also be acknowledged that a rapid and long-term increase in prices for energy carriers will shake the already weak US economy, particularly the industrial sector, will undermine hopes for renewal of production, and will increase social tensions in the country. On the contrary, serious and permanent lowering of the prices for oil and gas, which has been successfully tested for destabilization of the USSR, will put an end to the LNG export projects and pose a serious blow to current profits of not only Russian but also American and European energy companies, although it will facilitate the situation in the production sector of the economy. However, for Russia, such action will be maximally effective only having a Gorbachev's equivalent heading the state. The nice goal, to have the opportunity to destabilize the situation in Russia and China, even try to perform the controlled segmentation of these countries and getting non-nuclear satellite formation at their places. For now, it is easier to achieve this if this in Russia, that is much bigger than China in territory and rich in sources of raw stuff, but much less in the number of population, with a very high level of the property and social stratification, and extremely high level of rejection of the ruling oligarchy of the population that was formed during the collapse of the USSR. Besides having established control over the Russian territory, it will be possible to arrange almost complete blockade of China. China's navy is still incomparable to the US Navy in its opportunities, hence to get a major means of military and political pressure on China. The domestic political and economic situation both in Russia and China is not all that stable with all its important peculiarities and differences. In China it is rather a disease of growth and complexity of the search of the alternative Western model of development, not at the level of an underdeveloped, albeit a very large country, but a medium power, which is largely due to the efforts of the United States, more precisely its growing inefficiency, early forced to take on more burden of international responsibility. In Russia, this is weakness and half solutions in the struggle to overcome the catastrophic consequences of the collapse of the USSR, of the semi-criminal privatization of the 90s, and of formation of the comrade-oligarchic system mainly focused on exports of energy carriers. Economic problems, acute social and economic controversies that have objective nature in these countries will be attempted to be used by financial and oligarchic circles of the West hereafter, which doesn't mean the uniformity of both the interests and their approaches to Russia and China, as well as methods of achievement of their aims. The availability of differences here and often of antagonistic contradictions will be considered and used by Russia and China. In particular, this has been displayed in the degree of support of measure for isolation of Russia taken by Washington, D.C. For example, the volume of trade between Russia and the European Union is by order of magnitude greater than the volume of trade between Russia and the United States. That defines much more reserved attitude to the sanctions imposed by the European Union member countries. It is quite symbolic when the NASA announces termination of cooperation with Roscosmos in a number of directions on April 3rd within the scope of sanctions against Russia, and on April 4th, Russia and France announced signing the contract for supply of 7 Soyuz launch vehicles that will put satellites of France and other European countries to the orbit from the territory of French Guyana. Understanding of the evils of this opportunistic policy is intensified in the USA. And the 10th, last goal, to separate the peoples of Russia and Ukraine with blood. For this purpose, a certain type of provocation should be used to start a military conflict with Russia as a possible liberation of Ukraine from the radical nationalists and neo-Nazis during the peacekeeping mission of the Russian troops will involve thousands of fighters of the right sector, New Bandera fighters, within the scope of guerrilla war in the arrangement of mass civilian casualties. A major damage to these relationships has already been made, and the prospects of normalization of relationships between the countries and the conditions formed in Ukraine after the coup d'etat do not allow expecting normalization in conditions of the reactionary regime ruling in the country. Typical in the launching of the new government in Kiev to find support not with the existing law enforcement structures, but hastily created units of the National Guard out of nationalists and neo-Nazis, as well as ordinary people who believe the propaganda of the official Kiev, as well as with new special forces with high wages for the risks, which obviously witnesses the future of army officers and most of the militia staff with a democratic regime. On the other hand, radical nationalists played the key role in opposition to the regime of Viktor Yanukovych, which is acknowledged today in the West in reports of major media agencies. But B should follow A. The events of February 2014 were not a democratic revolution, but a successful takeover of the people's social protest by ultra-nationalists and fascists with the direct financial support of oligarchs that received the richest regions of Ukraine from the new government, where they were hastily appointed heads of local administrations. For example, Igor Kolomoisky, included into the top 3 richest people of Ukraine, headed the Dnipropetrovsk regional governmental administration and turned it into the major basis of formation of armed units of right radical nationalists in the southeast. Mr. Kolomoisky gave his consent to head the right sector in the southeast, according to media reports. After long consultations, his assistant, businessman Boris Filatov, posted his statement on a Facebook page as early as of February 28th. In it, he offered his receipt of pacification of the revolted southeast of Ukraine. And the last thing, he wrote, no assault force from the Maidan, no extremist claims. We need to give any promises, guarantees, and make any concessions with the scum, and we need to hand them only afterwards. In the middle of April, Boris Filatov dealt with creation of Special Squadron NIPA. We have the staff to select the best people that underwent military campaigns in Afghanistan and other flashpoints, the people that are in special forces and assault squads in accordance with their specialization. The squadron will have firearms and be equipped with the latest military technologies. It may be armed with both with heavy armaments and high and light armored vehicles. Mass media reported deputy's governor's words. Officials of Igor Kolomoisky's administration do not hide the fact that no easy tasks will be set before the Dnieper in the case of danger, and that the motivation will be supported with money. Usual fighters will receive about 15,000 hryvnias, and commanders will be paid at least 50,000 hryvnias, approximately 1,400 from $1,400 to $4,800 a month, which exceed by almost an order of magnitude. The source of money is not revealed by the governor's administration. I would like to avoid answering this question. The squadron will be inferior to the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and a separate budget will be formed for it. Boris Filatov informed mass media. He addressed the Donbass population on April 17th via Facebook. Dear Russian-speaking brothers from Donbass, lost, missing landmarks, having trusted the sweet promises of the scam, we have an offer to you. We will pay you the reward for each returned barrel of firearms. $1,000 for an automatic gun, $1,500 for a machine gun, $2,000 for a grenade launcher. We'll pay you the reward for each green person, a mercenary that worked on our common ground and trying to push us into the fratricidal war in the amount of $10,000. We'll pay you the reward for each liberated building transferred to the local authorities and to the Dnieper Special Squad in the amount of $200,000. Soldiers of the People's Militia of the Donetsk People's Republic commented to this statement as follows: we are insulted with the low price for our fighters. Do not look for us. We will come to get you ourselves. Perhaps it will happen soon. Thank you.